Hello everyone, welcome to this month's Wallace Branch Bird Talk. I'm Matthew, and today we'll be talking about the most colorful of Georgia's songbirds, the absolutely peerless painted bunting. We'll be going over identification, ecology, behavior, range, habitat, and end off with a few interesting nuggets of info on these stunning neotropical migrants. Without further ado, let's go. As always, let's start out with identification. Luckily, painted buntings are unmistakable regardless of their plumage. On the right, we have an adult male with their green backs, red breasts, and blue heads. They are absolutely unmistakable. No other bird in North America even comes close, and seeing one for the first time can be a little surreal. When singing, they make themselves conspicuous in the tops of trees, so it's hard to miss them once you know what you're looking for. Females and juvenile males are a leafy green overall with yellowish underparts, like the individual on the left. The bird here is likely an adult female, but males that have just left the nest will look like this too, only a little duller. Males will stay like this until the fall of their second year, when they start to molt into their brilliant multicolored plumage, but will still sing and try to nest while green in the previous spring, often causing confusion among newer bird watchers when they see what looks like a female, who are usually silent aside from their chip calls, singing. Side note, you can see the male on the right hand side has bands around his ankle. Researchers use these bands for different reasons, but mostly to identify individuals, especially with the colored bands, keep track of population numbers, track paths of migration, and a number of other things. The colored bands are often blank, though not always, and the aluminum bands have a unique alphanumeric code on them. On larger birds, like many shorebirds, the bands are often both colored and contain a unique code, so researchers can more easily identify individuals in the field. This is very common with birds like oyster catchers. So now that we've gone over identification, let's talk a little bit about their ecology and behavior. So outside of the breeding season, painted buntings are primarily granivorous, which means they eat mostly seeds, with grass seeds being a particular favorite. This is a common theme among many birds in its family, Cardinalidae, which includes, as you might have guessed, cardinals, but also grosbeaks and other bunting species. They're also very fond of wax myrtle bushes for their berries, cover, and as a place to nest, so folks who are savvy about these birds often plant these bushes in the hopes of attracting them. During the breeding season, however, they rely much more heavily on invertebrates for food, especially when feeding young. Wasps, beetles, flies, spiders, and most easily accessible arthropods are fair game for them. As might be expected from their gaudy plumages, painted buntings aren't particularly shy. The males especially like to show off on exposed perches and sing their bouncy, warbly song for the world. Males are also highly territorial against other males, leading to vicious showdowns when two of them come head to head, sometimes even leading to death or injury. While they're often fairly bombastic, they do like thick, shrubby areas as well, which can make females and young birds particularly hard to see with their leafy plumages, especially outside of the breeding season when they become just a little less bold. We've mentioned their song, which is kind of a witchity 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 witchity, but both sexes also give a wet metallic note as well. In terms of nesting, painted buntings are particularly fond of placing their nests in low, shrubby areas about 3 to 9 feet off the ground, but will nest higher up if suitable habitat isn't available. Their nests are made of grasses and other plant fibers bound together by spider webs and/or animal hair. Painted buntings will generally nest 1 or 2 times a season, but sometimes 3 on rare occasions, and will lay 3 to 4 eggs per clutch, rarely 5. The eggs are incubated by the female for 11 to 12 days, and the young leave the nest after another 12 to 14 days. The females are solely responsible for building the nest and caring for the young. So now let's move on to range and habitat. So this map above is the range map for the painted bunting provided by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. The orange areas are their summer range, the yellow is their migration path, and the blue is their wintering range. I mentioned this term before, but painted buntings are called neotropical migrants, which means a bird that migrates from Central or South America to North America and back, like hummingbirds and most warblers. If you look closely, you can notice that there are two populations of painted buntings. The eastern population that we have here in the southeast, and the western population that nests around Louisiana and Texas. If you look at the map, you can see the difference in where they breed. The eastern population winters in South Florida and the Caribbean, while the western population winters in Mexico and through Central America. We've touched on their habitat before, but painted buntings like woodlands, shrubby areas, and dunes on the coast. Again, they love wax myrtle in particular. Around here, Finizzi Swamp Nature Park is a great place to find them. They're only here for the summer, so I highly suggest going and looking for them before they leave around the end of September, beginning of October. And now, finally, for a few interesting tidbits about these colorful birds. As we mentioned before, there are two separate populations of painted buntings in the east and west respectively. An interesting difference between the two is that while the eastern population molts before migration, the western population molts mid-migration at various stopping points, according to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. This is similar to how many shorebirds, like sandpipers, molt on staging areas during their own migrations. As pictured above, you can actually attract these marvelous birds to your bird feeders if they're in your area. They're especially fond of white millet, which is fortunately a very inexpensive bird seed and a favorite of birds like different species of sparrow and mourning doves as well. Briefly mentioned this earlier, but they're a member of the family Cardinalidae, which includes cardinals. The family also includes grosbeaks and other species of bunting, like the absolutely stunning indigo bunting, which nests in similar habitats, only is more prone to fields and open areas. And finally, not really a fun fact, but important to note is that the painted bunting's population has been on a steady decline over the years due to habitat loss on both its summer and winter grounds, as well as illegal trapping for the pet trade in the Caribbean, Mexico, and even to some extent in Florida. As gorgeous and wonderful as the painted bunting is, its proper home is in the wild. And that's all I have for you today. Here are my sources for today's information, so you can pause the video and check these out for yourself if you'd like, which I highly encourage you to do. Plus, you can always use your Pines card to put some great bird books on hold or browse your nearest library branch and see what we have in person. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in once again and wish you all happy birding. Bye!